Good morning or afternoon. Afternoon, morning, evening to everybody. Hope you are all well and trading safely. Welcome to anybody who's new. If you are watching, come and say hello. It's always good. VP, how you doing? Lam, good to see you. Ian, hope you're all well. How's everybody's trading going? How have you been trading? Have we been winning? I'll go into the SPX in a bit, but I want to talk about this trade that I'm in now. So Dash finally getting a trade. And I'll talk about this on why I entered it, what I'm thinking about it, how we're going about it, and see what it's doing first. So let's go into it. I took this VP, hey RT, I watched your roller coaster story. Yeah, it was a roller coaster. Of becoming a profitable trader. It was both interesting and inspiring. I appreciate that, mate. I appreciate that, pal. Good to see you here. Always good to have a new person in. Anyway, so Dash. We are going with the trend. The crypto market is looking a little bit wobbly. Now, that doesn't mean it can't come back up, but we're going with that trend. The trend is your friend. So the setup came on this 4-hour chart with our cup with handle, and then we had a nice few bars here, about 4, 8, 12, 16 hours of accumulation prior to that level. Now, we look for a hard time frame confluence. We're zoom out, we're going with that trend. Very simple stuff, going with that trend. It doesn't look massively extended. Had our pullback into here, push down, another 2 days of pullback, and now we are continuing to the downside. The thing I also liked about it is we had a break of this wick. So whenever we see a hammer candle like this, which is meant to be a bullish sign, i.e. buyer saying, nope, this is the end of this downtrend, we want to push this up, and this fails, that's always something that I like to see. So higher time frame was there. We've come from this move to the upside on the daily, but this is obviously broken through that 61.8. So it kind of gets out the realms of trend continuation and goes into, well, are we changing trend from the 61.8, breakout retest, moving to the downside? So it's a trade that I like. We had a good breakthrough here on a little bit of volume, a nice 4-hour candle. And now we're possibly into this retest phase. Now this, I don't really like this hammer bar and this decent bullish bar and a bit of volume. However, we've not broken through this area. Stops are way back here. Remember, the stop location is there because if we do get stopped out, not saying it will or won't happen or whatever's going to happen in the future, we don't know, obviously. But if we get stopped out, the premise of the trade is wrong. So until that happens, even if we come back up, I've seen this many times. That's why I give my trades room to move. If we come back up into here, but then come back down, we're still creating a lower high, right? So technically, we're still continuing with that downtrend. And until this stop is hit, the premise is still there. Now, we have got this 20 period coming down. Possibly we're getting that retest here. 20 period catch up for movement to the downside. That is still my personal bias. And anything I do now, this is very important, even though this, you might be worried on, okay, we got a hammer and a decent bullish bar. The premise of the trade is still there. Anything I do now is psychologically driven. And I've, just like you mentioned there, VP, anything that I've done in the past over my horrible years to where I am now, that is psychologically driven. I'm basically messing up. Anything that I do now is wrong. So the premise of the trade's there. I'm not worried about it. We're possibly losing a bit of momentum on these smaller time frames. You still got this 200 above. Stops quite a little bit away. And yeah, I'm in that. I'm happy to take that to the downside and see what happens. So Dash looking at shorts. Ezio at work having a sneaky look. Good man. Bitcoin. Bitcoin's another one that we are looking at. And possibly this is the reason why we're getting a bit of movement upside into Dash, is that we're still in this corrective phase. So this, if we're looking at it now, is possibly turning into a bigger complex corrective. So if we're getting A, possibly B here, this may need to turn into an AB shallow C on that 20, possibly around that 200 for a catalyst to give us a potential signal that this wants to continue to the downside on account of this head and shoulders. So as I said, with all these trades, there's opposite ways you got to think. So not everything can go like, oh, this has to go to the downside, right? The opposite way of looking at this is we've got impulse, loss of momentum, harder reset, and potentially moving on. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I could be completely wrong, but I don't see, because of these two bars or a couple of bars here that look very, very bearish. So we're waiting for that complex corrective, that extra leg on Bitcoin to give us a catalyst on high volume to take this to the downside. So I still don't mind that. I think it's still, we have had this hammer on the 4 hour, so possibly it's just not ready to go yet. You can see how it broke out of this structure, gave us that hammer, and is now pushing on a little bit. We could be retesting this area, fail on that retest and come down, in which case we don't get the trade, but it may look good for our dash trade. However, I'm going to still look at that and see what happens with Bitcoin moving forward. Okay, let's go through the index, because the index is interesting. So we've had it. This is where it's kind of difficult. This is where it's difficult, certainly for inexperienced traders. So at this point here, yeah, I'll go through that, VP. I'll go through that at the end of the video. I'll do my watch list, the dollar, and then I'll go through the ABC at the end of the video. I'll put a video out on that individual topic because I talk about it quite a lot. So at this point here, right, we've moved to the downside. We've got what looks to be a complex corrective and this potential hammer indicating we continue to the downside. Now that changed. Once we broke through that, we saw the weakening off in the yen, commodity currencies being strong, and we're pushing through. Excuse me, 1 second. Once we got to this area, which is kind of the big resistance zone for your trend change from this corrective to continuation to the upside, we got a bit of sellers coming in. Morningstar here on a little bit of volume, 200 as well. Appreciate that, mate. I appreciate that. And when we come down here, we're still thinking, okay, we've come from this impulse, we're possibly correcting to continue to the upside, right? If we take our higher time frame confluence, we had that Morningstar and decent bullish price action up into around this retest of this ascending trend line. So at this point in time, we're thinking, okay, this looks okay. This big bar comes again. Your sentiment has to change, right? This is why it's difficult right now in this market, because you look at this from a pullback, what you normally want to see is either a complex or price action in a channel, something like that with ideally lowering volume, but your premise change. And certainly when we get a closure from this latest impulse underneath this 61.8, again, your premises change from, okay, this doesn't look very good for trend continuation, and actually looks better because we've broken underneath that 61.8, that, okay, maybe this higher time frame retest of the 20 of the ascending trend line is coming into fruition. So for me, the stocks don't look great. We've got those growth fears coming in fundamentally. We've got that inflation fears, those bloody inflation fears coming in again. But at the moment, you know, this looks like a corrective, doesn't it? On the smaller time frames, it looks to be like a corrective, looking for a breakout of this to move to the downside. I think if we do, the biggest part is a closure underneath this level. McLaren, how you doing, mate? Good morning. Good to see you. If we get a closure underneath this level, you could see that those stocks wobble. Now, not a closure like this, like a proper closure of this daily candle underneath that level, it could be certainly worrying from the stock. So in my opinion, in terms of risk sentiment, it's still in neutral, probably / slight risk off, but you're waiting for that confirmation. Okay, so you're waiting for a breakout here. I certainly wouldn't be buying those commodity currencies right now. I wouldn't be buying the Aussie, the CAD, or New Zealand. I'd be waiting for confirmation for those stock markets to break down, and then you may get opportunities in the yen, in the Swiss, in the US dollar, because we know markets fall a lot quicker than they rise. And it just looks a little bit wobbly. But I also, because of this market, I wouldn't discount the fact that this can come right back up. Like, I generally wouldn't discount that. So I'd wait for that confirmation. We've had that move to the downside. My personal bias, if we're taking this as a potential cut with handle here, retest of this trend line, 20 period curling down, a break underneath here, or possibly a few days of accumulation, and a break underneath here could signal potentially a worrying stock market. In which case, yeah, Look at those risk-off currencies. Look at gold as well to move your money into against those risk-off currencies. Roll in German 30. Yeah, I'll do the German 30, mate. I'll cover that as well. Let me know if you want me to look at anything. So SPX bias has got to be to the downside, but don't discount a little bit of a rally. Dollar looks bullish. Dollar looks bullish. I mean, we've thought that for a while, right? This daily chart looks good. Momentum is to the upside. I don't really want to. You know, at this point in time, you could say maybe we're in for a potential pullback from this slight climactive, but you've got to go with that trend. You know, the trend is your friend until it's not. So, for example, you're worried up here about potentially it coming back, right? And it continues on. And then you're worried here about potentially it coming back, and it continues on. And then you make a trade up here when you would have won a few trades here, here, here. Make a trade up here, and it eventually changes direction, and you lose your trade. Then you've just got to play that strength. And the strength in the dollar is coming in. Chart looks good. Small time frames look good. You get a setup in the dollar. I would certainly agree with buying it. Okay, watch list. USD SEK, which I believe is maybe has gone. Not yet. We've got this nice structure here. Cup with handle. Good ABC. 1, 2, push on. Didn't get our setup here, unfortunately. Now, when I talk about this, remember, this is just my trading. So if I've given you an idea and potentially you're finding a USD setup, you know, maybe when the chart's here, possibly down here, up here, then, you know, hopefully my bigger picture analysis might help you. However, for trading wise, I'm waiting for that 20 period catch up, that retest of that area. We might have already had it, but it's not a trade for me, but this looks good to the upside. So I just need a little bit more on USD SEK. Daily looks good. It's a really nice currency pair to look at. USD Czech. USD Czech may have gone a little bit for a retest. Normally when pairs move as much as this had from this section here on our head and shoulders, few bars of accumulation, not got the 20 period catch up that we wanted for a breakout, but possibly we can get a breakout retest here. We're in a slight steady state. Now, when I have a wick, so if I have a wick like we have here, normally I like to take the most respected area for the breakout. However, for a retest that's moved quite well, I can take a retest on this wick level. So it means this pair doesn't have to come down as far as it back to this previous major support level that we determined. So we need that 20 period, we need a little bit more, but I have a feeling that this may continue on to the upside. So USD Czech looks good. Again, unfortunately, another one that I'm just not getting involved in. But the good news is they're going in the right direction. So even though I'm on my watch list, this is why being an analyst is easy, because you can kind of say, yeah, let's go with the trend, and you'll probably be right most of the time. But trading-wise is the difficult one. So anyway, been selling Kiwi dollar for a couple of days. It's ticking along. I'll have a look at that as well. Kiwi dollar, German 30, and I'll do the ABC as well. Okay, finally, last two. I've only got two more. China 50. If you've been watching my streams, you'll know I've been watching this for a while. Still on the cards. Again, it's another one I don't think we'll get. However, if we do fail here, we can look at breakouts. But we're potentially getting a V reversal. So if we can get something like this, it may be a decent one. We can look for counter trend longs. So waiting for that to set up until it breaks through this area, we've got to continue to think the bias is to the downside, because that's what the chart is telling us coming from here. But if it does kind of tag this area, give us something decent to go to the upside, that might not be a bad trade considering it where it's come from. It's certainly something that, again, once you get on the good side of it, it really does move. And finally, Ripple. Ripple. Where's Ripple? So if you don't know, in 2016, I bought 500,000 XRP. And do you know what I bought it at? 5 cents. 5 cents. And I remember I can't remember, it must have been 2019, was it? The Christmas of 2019, I was in Austria. And I looked at my portfolio. I was skiing. It was a beautiful place. Oh, beautiful place. I was sitting in a chalet, having a glass of champagne. I looked at my portfolio, it was well over $1 million. I'm thinking, shit. I never sold it, by the way. Just I'm still holding on to it, so it's still quite nice. But yeah, in the space of, it must have been, was it a year and a half, or maybe, yeah, I'm sure it was a year and a half since I started buying it. Jesus, it was unbelievable. Anyway, but I'm looking at Ripple shorts. So we've got our B wave here. So if we consider this an AB shallow C, again, like Dash, like Bitcoin, we're going with the trend. Right? Always put the odds in your favor. We're underneath these moving averages now, underneath this 200. So good, we have our higher time frame confluence. This is almost ready. Okay, this is almost ready. Potential head and shoulders there. If we get a little bit of movement to the downside, if I zoom in here, right? So we're talking possibly US session today, possibly tomorrow morning. Let that 20 period, again, using as a visual guide, because it is close to price action, so that's good for a breakout. Let that 20 period start to curl around. Give us a little bit here, again, on lowering volume to take this to the downside. I do like breaks of B wave. Right, B wave breaks are probably my favorite here. So if we get the setup, that will also be a decent trade to the downside. And we know with crypto how volatile it is. It can move when it wants to move. Okay, let's see what you're looking at. So that's what I'm looking at. Really, it's Bitcoin, still waiting for that. USD SEC, still waiting for that. And probably Ripple is the next one. And that Dash trade that I'm in. Okay, let's do the German 30. I actually like the German 30 to trade. Who asked me that? McLaren. I like the German 30. You got to start on the daily chart. Let me just take a second here to make sure I'm processing what I'm looking at. So with it, like the SPX, it looks a little bit bearish. Okay, we've had a reaction off this support zone, this kind of trend to or anchor to trend, creating what's possibly a slight quasi cut with handle. You had some wiki price action here. Now look at this. Simple 20, respecting the simple 20. Okay, wiki price action, decent bearish day yesterday. On the 4-hour chart, again, similar to the SPX, we've definitely breached below that 61.8. We're having a little bit of a bullish pressure here. What I would think is if we take this latest impulse, that's what we want to do. We want to take the latest impulse. This is your kind of line in the sand. This is where you kind of first should really go about, okay, which direction is the trend? Obviously, we're downside, but from this move, are we in a pullback? Or are we in a potential change in direction? We're at this 40-60 box. Okay, even though this in terms of trend continuation, this price action isn't the nicest, is it? Because it looks, you want for a pullback this rather than this. But if you get a catalyst that says this potentially wants to move to the downside, then that would be good. What I think with these types of pullbacks, sometimes what you see is a complex corrective. So if we get a decent impulse on this initial A wave, if you get something like that for continuation to digest this kind of climactic short-term move, that would look even better for trend continuation. Now, the danger here, if you are looking long or short, I'm not sure which way you're looking at, Roland, is if it does push up and give you a reversal. So if this trajectory continues above that 61.8, right, potentially above this resistance zone and closes above it, then you can look at changing a trend. Until then, your bias has got to be this trend is to the downside, and we continue that trend, finding a catalyst. So even though the chart's not great, it's not the nicest of charts, but there's more indication that this goes down rather than it goes up. You know, just by looking at your eyes, you can see that we had a V reversal, but not a break through these highs, so it's not technically valid. And we failed at this area. Got this 200 coming up. You know, as a longer term play, if you get something like this, then it would look decent to the downside. But yeah, it's more bearish than certainly bullish, I would say. Wait for a catalyst to the downside is your best bet for a winning trade. Remember, you know, we're doing this. If you do this, if you're thinking you're buying this over 1,000 trades, you're going to come off worse off than you're thinking about selling this structure over 1,000 trades. And that's all we need. We need our little edge. That's it. We need our little edge in the market. Play that edge over a long period of time, and you'll be all right. So that's why I try to think long term, I always try to think about annual instead of one trade. So really dashes doesn't matter. Who cares what happens with dash? It's just one trade. I've got my edge. I've back tested my edge. And that's it. That's all I do. Same things day in, day out. Kiwi dollar. Kiwi dollar. Kiwi dollar is one of my favorite pairs to trade. This looks good to the downside. We are at this support zone, so you possibly could get a reaction. This was looking not too bad at this area here. Again, you got your V reversal, accumulation, decent breakthrough on increasing volume. Okay, so we're getting a slight, is it possibly a slight bend here for a pullback? We'll have to wait and see. The reason why I didn't like that for a breakout is because of this section here. So normally I like it to be a little bit cleaner, but bias, again, coming from this section, it's gone out the realms of trend continuation. Not that that can't happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but your bias has got to be to the downside. I wouldn't be selling it yet. I would either be looking for a pullback opportunity, which you may get if buyers come in at this support zone, because you probably expect that considering all this price action here has resulted in buyers coming in, irrespective of this section here. So you're probably expecting some sort of reaction. However, bias has got to be to the downside. Potential breaks underneath this area, break and close. Maybe this trend continues. You know, with that dollar strength, dollar has momentum. It's not massively extended on the 4 hour. You know, it's not like at this stage here where you're coming up from this section thinking, can this really do that again? It's not massively extended. So yeah, Kiwi dollar to the downside for me. Shifath, how you doing, pal? Good to see you. New hero, EURUSD. EURUSD. Okay, I'll do EURUSD. EURUSD, I was looking at this yesterday, you know, and I almost had a trade in it. The only issue is it started to mess up a little bit around here. So on this hourly, if we take all this away, let's say we can't see all this, what's happened here. This looked pretty good. It was coming to the retesting phase. We had our cup with handle, nice little reload, good breakthrough on increasing volume, accumulation and reload on lowering volume. This was looking good, and then it got a little bit messy. So I couldn't really take this. It's not really a great catalyst for me, even though my stop would have been there. It just wasn't there. However, it looks good to the downside. EURUSD looks good to the downside. Daily's breaking underneath this. If we get a decent close here, are we coming to the end of this? I don't quite think so. I think I'd certainly rather be selling the EURUSD than buying it. However, we are at this area here. We tried to break below. We've closed not quite below. So maybe you get a slight reaction. But in terms of trend, like this is a lovely trending market, isn't it? Really. Push through, correct. Push through, correct. Push through, okay, a little bit messy here, but look at this. Push through, push through, push through. You've had nice price action just prior to the level here. And a decent bar, although we didn't break below, on a little bit of volume. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to play that trend, right? Why would you be buying it? I understand if you're a support and resistance trader, okay. But for me, you've got to go with that trend. And if you get potentially another something like that, back to that 20, taking a breakout to the downside makes sense, right? So you could, if you've been selling into this trend, you've probably made a decent bit of money, right? So just continue to do that until it says don't do it. You know, that's the essence of trend continuation, right? Sell the trend until the bend at the end. So yeah, EURUSD looks good. Nice price action here, slight pullback, but my bias is to the downside. If it goes up, then I'll eat my hat, but what we can do. You're a nice teacher. I appreciate that, mate. Rohan, how you doing, pal? Good to see you. No problem, Rohan. No problem. Okay, I'll finish off then on who asked me about the ABC. I think it was it Ezio? Ezio? Who asked me about the ABC? It's gone. Ah, it was VP. Sorry, it was VP. Okay, I'll go through it quickly because what I'll do, VP, is I'll put an actual video out on it because I think it's quite a good topic where I'll do it in a proper YouTube video. So the ABC, I'll go through it in the kind of essence. So if we have an uptrending market, there's quite a few things here. Do fundamentals play a part in your analysis? No. Ezio, so when I was going through my shit stage, my learning stage, I found that basically I'm not smart enough to analyze all these fundamentals, right? In a kind of deeper sense of the way. There's people in this market that's way more smart than me. Why I like technical analysis is just because the premise is everything that we know in the market right now is reflected in current price, right? So what resonates with me, and this is just me personally, is the candles, right? I like the fact that, okay, I just focus on this. I don't care what's happening. Obviously, I take account if there's big news events coming on. I won't put a shorter time frame trade on, okay? FOMC, NFP, etc. But in terms of analyzing the fundamentals, no, it doesn't really affect. I've been a better trader since I've taken that away from it. Purely because this is what resonates with me. I like to see it. You know, within the candles, there's psychology within every candle, right? And yeah, I just prefer it. I just prefer it. So I don't like to get bogged down. I felt that I was getting my bias get the better of me. For example, thinking, well, this data's come out, so the euro should get stronger. And a lot of the times, what I saw was after decent data coming out, the euro would kind of fall off. And I'm thinking, well, why the hell has this happened? You know, the data's coming out, the euro's good, but the euro's falling. You know, so I didn't really like it. It detrimented my trading. What's your live timing? I come on here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. GST. Yeah, Dean, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at this time. Basically 1 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Come on. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll do USD NOK and then I'll get into ABC and that'll be it. Because a VP did ask quite, so I'll do the ABC and I'll do USD NOK quickly and then I'll do ABC. USD NOK looks good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. If you do like it, hit that like button. Helps me out. I'm trying to grow the channel. Try to get to 400 subs. So I would appreciate that. USD NOK, Rohan looks good, mate. Look at that. Breaking out. Decent push up. Same with the hourly. 4 hour looks good. Rejection off that 200. We're above that 20. We do have a little bit of resistance here to get through. Okay, but you'd expect that to get up here and maybe have a decision to make around this area. So, yeah, USD NOK looks good, mate. I like your trade idea, but just be wary of this section because you may get a reaction. Remember, price is always like a magnet to these support and resistance areas. So you're expecting a reaction from them. And you've got that 200, which is your probably biggest dynamic resistance in terms of moving averages. So I like the idea. It looks good in the small time frames, yeah. Hold it, mate. What you should do if you're in it, right, you can put your stop underneath there. Right, you've got your swing. So if this comes down, the premise of the trade, again, I talk about the premise of the trade. The premise of the trade is done, right? Because we've broken through, we've broken out of this swing, we've broken above this structure, we're above these moving averages as well. So you've got that support to price. So your stop should be there and just let it run. Let it run as much as it wants to do. That's where they're saying, let your winners run, cut your losers come from. Yeah. Thanks, Ian. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to get to the ABC. I'll get to the ABC now. Whatever, let's put this chart up here. So, the ABC. Within our trends, right, normal trends go like this. Push up, correct, push up, correct, push up, correct, right? That's a trending market. Dow theory. So we talk about Dow theory, we've got higher highs and higher lows, right? Higher highs, higher lows. This is an uptrend, lower highs, lower lows. This is a downtrend. Okay, it's a very simple Dow theory. If you don't know what Dow theory is, just go and have a Google, and you can figure it out. Now, within pullbacks, so within these sections here, there's different types of pullbacks you can have. You can have single leg pullbacks, like this, and move on. Or you can have multi-leg pullbacks, where it comes in the form of a complex, ABC, ABCDE, something like this. Channel correctives is the kind of family you'd put them into, right? So that's within the pullbacks. Now, added on to Dow theory. So Dow theory states that there's 3 types of trends. Okay, and if you watch me for a while, you probably know this, but for the new guys, maybe you don't. So there's 3 types of trend. There's the primary trend, there's the secondary trend, and there's the tertiary trend. Okay, so the primary trend, if we're going like this, is an uptrend. So that's our primary trend because we've come from this section to this section. We're moving on an uptrend. The secondary trend is basically your pullbacks within that primary trend. So this is your secondary trend, okay? And your tertiary trend is your movements within that secondary trend before pulling on, right? So we've got primary trend, secondary trend. Volatility in that secondary trend is your tertiary trend. Now, the reason why I like the ABC, and then I'll go into basically what it is because if we consider Dow theory, okay, and that the idea that there's sometimes single leg pullbacks and multi-leg pullbacks. So this might, anyway, I'll go into it, is that if we get price action that looks like this, okay? So let's say, I'll take this from the beginning. So if we push up and we're in this pullback stage, okay? So when this starts to move up, we've got traders at this section thinking that, okay, this is a single leg pullback, creating our lower high from this uptrend. So I'm going to buy this market here. My stops are here for continuation, okay? What we end up happening is we have these highs here, okay? We don't breach these highs, and at this point, we start coming back. So what happens then is some traders incorrectly say that this is a change in trend because we've technically got a lower high rather than part of that secondary trend within the primary trend. Does that make sense? So they're saying this is a lower high within this primary trend, but that is actually just part of this secondary trend, okay? So you've got sellers coming in at B wave here. So we have A here, B here. You've got sellers coming in this section saying, right, this is a lower high, we're changing trend, okay? Stops are above here, and we end up coming down. Now, the psychology and the reason why I like the ABC is because we know, right, whether you believe it or not, manipulation, for me personally, manipulation happens in the market. We see stop locations. You think about stop locations for retail are taken out time and time and time again, okay? So what then happens is we come back for a multi-leg pullback and we breach this A wave. So what happens when you breach A wave? All these buyers here, and when they come down also, when this section comes down, these buyers at A wave are thinking, shit, this is supposed to be a lower high. Why have we not broken down? We're coming down now. I might start exiting out my positions, but if not, your stops are down here. So stops are taken out, creating C wave, okay? So brokers are happy. There we go, there's some money. What then happens, as part of this multi-leg pullback, remember, we're not taking a single leg, we're going into a multi-leg, is we start pushing up, okay? So we start pushing up from this primary trend. And there's a reason for that. I'll go in after I've finished it. And the reason for why I'll go in after I finish this kind of explanation. So once we push up, these sellers at B wave start to become worried because they're saying, okay, we've breached this lower high now, we're going to low, why are we coming up? So sellers at B wave are starting to become panicky, possibly exiting out positions, but their stops are up here. So this is why I like B wave, is once we push through B wave, you often get, or sometimes you do get, that liquidity move because of stops being taken out, and we continue to the upside, okay? So basically with the ABC, the reason why I like it, remember, we're trying to be better than 95% of failing retail traders, is we got buyers in here, stops taken out, we've got sellers in here, stops taken out, and we continue to the upside. Now, the reason why that happens is, one of the things I use to determine whether it's going to be a single leg or a multi-leg is a simple 20 period, right? So if we've come from this move to the upside, okay, and we're in our single leg pullback, but our 20 period moving average is somewhere down here. Now, I use this 20 period as a visual guide to get me in at the right times. So just looking at this, if we look at this chart, look where the pullbacks are coming. Here, roughly around that 20 period, and then we push on, okay? Come to the downside, pull back roughly around that 20 period, and then we push on. So for me to determine whether this uptrend, this pullback is going to be a single leg or a multi-leg, is simply the use of that 20 period, right? So that's why I use it, to get into trades at the right time. So if this starts to push on and the 20 period is down here with a little bit of an extension there, that's why I think, well, this could possibly turn into a multi-leg pullback, okay? And that's what I like to see. My ABC is the favorite, right? So we come up here. When we come up there, the 20 period catches up a little bit more. And that's when it's kind of attracted to it, come down to our C wave, which you often find on that 20 period, for continuation to the upside. Okay, so that's what I essentially use to determine whether we're possibly getting a single leg or a multi-leg. So we need to be smarter than these people in here. And it's a very simple tool, but I tell you, it works time and time again, right? So we don't want to be buying here. We want to be buying at the right time. This doesn't happen 100% of the time, but we want to be buying at the right time. Now, added into the ABC pullback is volume, okay? Volume. So if you've got our complex corrective here, what we want to see is lowering volume during these corrective phases. You know, if we get higher volume from A wave here to B wave, that's not too bad. That's showing us that buyers are kind of coming in, right? Lowering volume at corrective. And to figure out if we have our 20 period and we have price action here and some more volume is coming in on that pullback, then that's another good sign to me, right? Added into that, if we have that pullback around that 20 and we use simple candlestick patterns, so our very simple hammer, right? Engulfing bar, evening, morning star, something like that. That also adds with volume, with that 20, with that complex corrective. We're ticking a few boxes here, adding confluence to our trade. Finally, and finally added to that, what I use it on is a breakout retest. So if we have our resistance area, let's say it's moving to the upside, we've got our breakthrough, we've got our complex corrective, right? So we didn't have a multi-leg because the 20 period is down here. We've got our multi-leg, our ABC corrective, stops taken out. When we push on, stops taken out. We have our candlestick pattern here on high volume. We've got that 4 now. We've got our ABC, we've got our volume, we've got our complex corrective, we've got our 20 period, and we've got our catalyst to move to the upside. So these are really, really powerful for my breakout retests, right? And I love to see them. An ABC with a hammer on volume, on that 20 period, from an uptrend is a really powerful pattern. Really powerful pattern. So again, don't get caught in the 95%. I'm not saying that we can't have a single leg pullback. There's a difference between a channel pullback and a single leg from this move. But this is where the eyes also come in. Because if we move like this and we have a pullback does it, you know, in terms of range, does it really look enough to digest that move to the upside? So for me, not. So the ABC, you know, it is a great, powerful pattern. You know, I don't really care if other people lose money as long as I don't lose money. But I like the fact that stops are getting taken out. I like the fact that people are wrongly identifying this here as a change in trend rather than part of the secondary trend within a primary trend. Right? Adding our 20 period, adding our volume, adding our catalyst, adding our breakout retest, ABC for the win, to be honest. Yeah, and it really works. I trade. Yeah, exactly. It really does work. And many times you'll find 7 or 8% trades. Yeah, so here, I can't remember if pound Aussie was a 7-8% trade, but let me see if it was. I think it was maybe a steady state corrective. Where was that pound Aussie trade that I missed? I'll bring on some examples. So it was on a 4-hour chart. I think it was on the 4-hour. No. Okay, what I'll do, guys watching, what I'll do is I'll get some examples of trades that I've taken, some breakout retests, so you can see that. I'll find a few examples for Friday. Yeah, it was on the 30-minute, Rohan. But I'll get a few examples, because that's probably the best way to do it, to explain what it is and how it works. Anyways, I hope that helped. If it did help you, come on, let's get one more like. Let's get 10 likes. There's 12 of us in there. Let's get one more like before I go. That would be perfect. But I'll see you all on Friday. As I said to the new people, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. I'm here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I start at 1 p.m. GST. And if you're not subbed to the channel, bang that subscriber, and I'll hopefully get 400. All right, guys, take care, and I'll see you on Friday. Peace.